We believe that this is the best way to protect thousands of good, well-paying jobs and the safest and most effective way to get our natural resources to world markets. Make no mistake, this is an investment in Canada's future.
The federal government has repeatedly said the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion is of vital national interest and it must be built. Today, it put its money where its mouth is and agreed to buy the pipeline project for at least $4.5 billion. Kinder Morgan had given Ottawa until May 31st to quash BC's opposition to the project, but when that didn't happen, this is what the feds came up with. Criticism is coming in hot, though, from all sides on the Hill, and that's where we're heading right now. Shannon Stubbs is the Conservative critic for natural resources. Jenny Kwan is the NDP's critic for multiculturalism, immigration, refugees, and citizenship. They join me now from the foyer of the House of Commons. Hi to both of you. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, Ms. Stubbs, I'm gonna start with you. I know that you're not supportive of taxpayer money going into this project. What would your party have done differently?
Well, here's what happened today. Under these Liberals, $100 billion in energy investment have left Canada. They've killed 3 pipelines, and today the announcement really was about Kinder Morgan divesting from Canada, being the latest in a long list of private sector energy investors, oil and gas proponents and pipeline proponents leaving Canada. And what the Liberals have done is put taxpayers on the hook for it. And they won't even reveal the true cost. So Conservatives would have championed Canadian energy, would have exerted federal jurisdiction, would have enforced the rule of law, and wouldn't be bringing through multiple changes to the regulatory process and legislation like the offshore tanker ban, the drilling ban, and telling the world on multiple occasions that Canada should phase out the oil sands and get off oil. That is what has created the political uncertainty and risk that is driving energy investment out of Canada, and that's what's happened today.
But sorry, what would, I know you said you would have asserted jurisdiction, but how would that really have made a difference? Like, how would you have convinced John Horgan not to oppose this project?
Well, I am trying to bring forward legislation right now that's passed the Senate with a majority of votes.
Will that legislation change John Horgan's political calculation?
It will exert federal jurisdiction over all aspects of the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion, its operations, its construction, its maintenance.
Will it stop the
challenges from other levels of government in order for the expansion to proceed, and so that the private sector proponent that actually owned the pipeline and the plans for expansion as of yesterday could go ahead and build it.
Okay, Ms. Kwan, I want to move over to you because during question period, your party criticized the government for essentially promoting pipeline expansion over protecting the environment. The government and Alberta's NDP premier actually says that they can do both. Do you think they're wrong?
Well, the Prime Minister, you'll recall, stood in the world stage in Paris to say Canada's back. I don't think anybody anticipated that meant that Canada would bail out big oil, that we would actually buy a pipeline to the tune of $4.5 billion. I think that people anticipated this government to honor what they said they would do, and that is to make sure these kinds of projects go through a robust environmental assessment process, which did not happen. And then I think that people expect climate leaders to actually really stand up for our future, to say no to big oil, to actually say that we will invest instead that $4.5 billion in green technology. I think that people expected the Prime Minister to do in what is in the best interest of Canadians, and that is to respect Indigenous communities, and not to really thumb their nose on what the government calls a new nation-to-nation relationship. And right now, the government is flying in the face of what I think people voted for them on. In the 2015 election... So, Ms. Kwan, though, are you opposed then to a bailout for the auto sector? Are you opposed to government money going to Bombardier? Well, I'm opposed to this bailout. I'm opposed for the government to bail out big oil by writing a $4.5 billion. Well, you know what? You can also actually invest in a green energy plan by supporting the workers. And in fact, what would it be for the government to say, let's say, invest $4.5 billion into solar panels in all First Nations community so that they can get heat in their homes, can get heat in their schools, for example? What about investing that money, $3.2 billion, would get clean drinking water into every single First Nations community across this country.
But were you opposed to the auto bill? I just, is it just because the money is going to the oil sector, or are you opposed to the loan that went to Bombardier?
Well, the government promised and the Prime Minister promised that they would actually phase out oil subsidies, subsidies to big oil in the last election. Are they doing that? No, they're writing them a $4.5 billion check to bail them out. That's not all of the cost. There's additional costs to come. How much is it going to cost to build this pipeline? Right? And how many more billions are taxpayers going to be on the hook on this? So every single project to which the government goes through, we need to evaluate those issues on the merit of the cases. In this instance, quite frankly, I question the merit of it. I question the government's approach to it. They've right from the get-go failed Canadians and betrayed Canadians when they said that they were bringing in a new process. They did not do that. They are failing and betraying Indigenous communities when they said that this is the new nation-to-nation relationship. Really? Is this what they call a new nation-to-nation relationship? And then
Stubbs,
climate action.
Yeah, no, sorry, I've got to move on to Ms. Stubbs.
How does that square up?
I understand, Ms. Kwan. Ms. Stubbs, what did you make of Bill Morneau's answers and the government's answers on how much that this might cost, and that basically they can't tell us at this point because the information beyond that $4.5 billion is commercially sensitive?
Well, I think if Canadians are now shareholders in this pipeline, they deserve transparency on exactly what the cost will be. And it is astounding that the finance minister can't answer those questions, but this is the reality. They can't because the tax dollars going into this pipeline aren't even at this point paying for the construction of the expansion. What those tax dollars, Canadian tax dollars, are doing is going to Kinder Morgan to build pipelines in other countries.
Okay, sorry, and just to tell our viewers, I think we're having some technical difficulties with the lights there, so apologies for the on and off. It's a new kind of show. We're getting really snazzy. Ms. Kwan, what did you make of the issue of transparency? I mean, Minister Morneau made an interesting case here for why he can't disclose. You know, he doesn't want to say something that would then undervalue the project so that we don't get the full price for it when it is transferred to a private company. But do you think they could have been more forthcoming on how much this really will cost?
Well, there's zero transparency altogether. In Budget 2018, there's not one indication that the government's going to spend $4.5 billion to buy a pipeline, and which, by the way, the spend of that $4.5 million will not actually build the pipeline. That bill is yet to come, and we have no idea how big is the bill is. And they're saying, oh, I'm sorry, Canadians, now that you're the shareholders and we're going to spend your money to bail out a Texas oil company, but we can't tell you how much more we're going to spend. All of that is in your best interest. Really, what household do you know that you're going to buy a major capital project, the major item, that you actually don't know how much it's going to cost you down the road? I mean, it is absolutely absurd for the government to make this suggestion.
And it's crazy that we're even having the conversation about this imaginary future private sector investor in the Trans Mountain expansion, when as of yesterday there was one. It was Kinder Morgan. But because of the cumulative impact of the Liberals' policies, the Liberals' uncertainty, the Liberals' risk, and the failure of leadership of the Prime Minister, he's paying $4.5 billion at a minimum.
But your party wanted this pipeline to get built.
The Kinder Morgan.
Your party wanted the pipeline to get built. Aren't you happy that it will be?
In other countries. There's no guarantee about that at all. In fact, what's happened is the opponents to the Trans Mountain expansion today have said that they will redouble their efforts to oppose the expansion because they want to shut down pipelines and oil and gas. So Canadians can be forgiven for asking for transparency on these costs and for wanting to know what the final bill will be. And what is the signal? This is the dangerous and most concerning part. What is the signal to future private sector energy investors or multinational companies who just want to invest billions of dollars in the Canadian economy, that even after a project makes it through a rigorous regulatory process with the highest standards in the world, additional consultation is approved in the national interest, the private sector still can't go forward in Canada to build big projects? That's why more energy investment has left Canada under this Prime Minister than any other in more than half a century. And I think it's just the tip of things to come.
Okay, thank you both very much for your time. I appreciate it. Thanks to Shannon Stubbs and Jenny Kwan.
Thank you.